how it started, how it's going.
And people have got brains in their heads and they're intelligent.
Well,
they may
they're not all intelligent, are they?
With him, it's like no conversation can even take off from the runway. Combing that greasy hair.
No, but I'm just interested in why you only care about these issues when we're talking about foreigners. Did you just tell me to be quiet?
Just the absolute narcissism and entitlement of this guy.
It's nothing personal, it's just bad luck.
So you're comparing refugees to bacteria?
He loves it. James O'Brien has really not recovered from the fate of Brexit.
What they've done to this country, how they broke it. The average intelligence levels of Leave voters versus Remain voters. And I don't know how to talk about it anymore.
It's 2016. Move on.
Right, I am proud to be British. Right?
What do you mean? What do you mean when you say that? What are you proud of?
It must be so exhausting just hating your country this much.
You can get killed in some countries for being gay.
And they can come to this country and kill me for being gay, so just saying.
You know, my theory is that it all comes down to racism, stroke white supremacism. How dare they?
Yeah.
James O'Brien.
Hello everyone, it is Jack. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new, hello. And welcome back to another episode of Tick Toxic. That's right. In Tick Toxic, I examine controversial influencers who are influencing the youth of today and having an underestimated effect on politics, society, and how we operate in objective reality versus online spaces. And last time on Tick Toxic, you saw my critical analysis of James is Smiling, the non-man and they-them aficionado, estrogen microdoser, syfluencer, and gay orgy goer.
Been invited to 3 sex parties tonight.
So if you want to check that one out, link is on the screen and in the description. Now everyone, it's been a hot minute since I did Tick Toxic and it's made me really sad. I wish I could split myself in two, get a time turner like Hermione Granger and all that stuff. Love you, JK Rowling. But it doesn't matter. We are back today and hopefully I'm going to be bringing you more and more Tick Toxic as the months roll by. And today, I have something a little bit different for you at Tick Toxic. We are going to be looking at James O'Brien, the UK broadcaster, journalist, and media personality who has been presenting on LBC, the leading Britain's conversation radio show since 2004. James O'Brien currently hosts the weekday mid-morning slot on LBC, where he talks about many UK political issues. He speaks to journalists, politicians, and speaks to many callers that phone in. And trust me, you're going to see a lot of interesting conversations there today. O'Brien is known for his critically acclaimed books, How to Be Right, How to Not Be Wrong, Modest, and How They Broke Britain. Such as James O'Brien's vendetta upon certain personalities, he was once a seemingly moderate journalist, but has become more and more unhinged as the years have gone on. In fact, check out this tweet from Darren Grimes, where we see a meme of James O'Brien, how it started, how it's going. And if you know James O'Brien, you will know that he has been dealing with the trauma of Brexit since the referendum in 2016. And other people's words, not mine, but they seem to think that perhaps he is not doing very well and has become increasingly more and more red-faced. But what do I know? Maybe it's just age. Known for his self-indulgent and long-winded monologues, self-righteousness, and superciliousness when he talks to anyone who seems to disagree with him, especially the native white working class population of Britain, James has an endless supply of reactable videos on the internet. And lucky for us, we're going to be looking at some of those which made the cut today. And for those of you from my UK audience, just sit back, relax, enjoy the clown show, and please give us a bit of pity on what we have to put up with here. And that is enough of my rambling now. Let's go. Number 1, a big fat bully.
The United Kingdom's a fantastic country, and people have got brains in their heads and they're intelligent.
Well,
they may
they're not all intelligent, are they?
Well, I don't know.
Well, of course you know. 50% of the population is of below, or 49.9% of the population is of below average intelligence.
Well, that's a statistic I've never heard of, but I'll have to take your word for it.
Well, let's just think about it, shall we?
I know this isn't about the argument, but you always see him make these really weird faces of agony. You can see him reacting to his own video, which is,
well, let's just think about
not
it,
the most
What's half
thing.
of 100%?
And when he talks
50.
to people,
What
he
is
also
going to be
makes
below
some
half
very weird
of 100?
movements, which we're going to see plenty of.
What's half of 100%?
50.
What is going to be below half of 100?
49.999.
So what percentage of the population is of below average intelligence?
Yeah, but where are you getting that statistic from?
Where do you think I'm getting it from?
I have no idea. You tell me.
I'm just counting.
So that's your opinion that 49.999% of the population of the United Kingdom are below average intelligence?
No, it's not my opinion. It's a mathematical fact.
Where is this mathematical fact published?
So if you saw this one clip, you might say, fair enough, he's kind of owning this caller. But this is something that James O'Brien does again and again and again with anyone he disagrees with. He is so belittling. He is so patronizing. He makes the conversation about this intelligence average thing just purposefully to make the caller look stupid. And notice with all of the callers that he seems to have disdain for, they tend to have more common working class accents. And that is really something that James O'Brien can't stand.
What's half of 100%?
50.
What is going to be below half of 100?
49.999.
So what percentage of the population is of below average intelligence?
Yeah, but where are you getting that statistic from?
So you can really see how much he relishes in this moment to make his caller sound as stupid as possible. And I will object to James O'Brien's claim just for a moment because, okay, you could say that in Britain, the average intelligence, there's obviously 49.999, whatever, below average intelligence, but why are we just talking about Britain? Why don't we talk about the average intelligence in the West or in the G7 or globally? You could take that angle on it. But overall, most of James O'Brien's arguments to his guests are purposefully to intimidate them, to get them tongue-tied. And overall, it just comes across really disingenuous. Hey everyone, if you are enjoying this video, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I know many of you watch my videos but are not subscribed, so hit that button. And with that said, let's get back to TikToxic.
Desire to see more respect for women.
Should I tell you what I like about Kemi?
Yeah, go on then.
I tell you what I like, because you keep hitting her with the maternity thing, and
you know, with other presenters, and I do listen to some others on LBC, which I think are great. Vanessa Feltz, I'm looking at you. James O'Brien only wants to give energy and entertain people that agree with him. So you have a caller who clearly sounds amicable, like he's happy to have an open and honest debate. And he just says, do you know what I like about Kemi Badenoch? She's the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK. And I think most presenters, even if they did not like Kemi and the Tories, they would say, okay, yeah, I'm going to listen. But immediately he is just like, go on then, slouching on his seat. You can see that he's already written off the caller.
I think that was a slip-up, and I don't think she'd ever enact a policy like that.
Wasn't a slip-up, mate. She doesn't do slip-ups. She said so.
Well, yeah, I think that's rubbish. But
hang on, you're supposed to be bigging her up.
Well, I'll tell you why I like her. I think she's a rare specimen in politics because she's an engineer in her background. She's from an immigrant background where she's come here and done a lot as an individual in sort of getting on her own 2 feet.
I think she was born here.
And yes, but her family came over with relatively little.
Right.
And she's built up from that. And she's an engineer, which is rare in politics. She's a problem solver.
I think the biographical details are actually a bit wrong there. I think she came here.
James O'Brien loves his semantics, steering his opponent away from the point so that they don't actually get the chance to make it. And while Kemi Badenoch was born in the UK, she left at a very, very young age and then immigrated back here when she was 16. So you could definitely say that she is sort of from an immigrant background. She grew up until she was a teenager in Nigeria. And then instead of listening to this person's point about why they like the leader of the Tory party, all it becomes about is this semantical issue, which doesn't really have that much relevance. And of course, steers it away from the point.
When she was born here and then she came on her own when she was 16. I don't know that her family have ever settled here.
I'm not sure on a family detail, but I know that she's.
But that was your main. That was what you just said as the reason why you like her so much, and it's not true.
Well, I like the fact that she's.
Oh well, I'm not sure about the details. So let's move on and actually learn a bit more about what you like about her. But no, he's like, well, nope, that's what you said. So no, I'm not listening. No, you're obviously a liar. It's just so exhausting.
The problem solver because
what problems has she solved?
Well, I'm speaking fundamentally in terms of her inclinations.
What problems has she solved fundamentally?
Well, she's not been put in power to do it. I mean, she was in the trades. I think she did a lot of trades work that was quite good.
For example?
I think she's... Well, if you're interested in the discussion of where I think she'll take politics...
No, I'm interested in your reasons for admiring her, which are her problem-solving abilities and the trade deals that she signed. So I'm going to have to ask for some examples.
I can't... If I'm honest to you, I can't list every trade negotiation.
No, I don't need all of them. I just need one.
you will see more and more that James O'Brien interrupts and interrupts, tries to confuse his opponent. For me, it's just not really the right mood for radio, because fair enough if you have two politicians on, or you're debating a journalist or something like that. And sure, it's fine to disagree with one of your callers, but he always seems to be determined to talk over them, to stifle them, to get them to squirm and trip over their words, which is very much the behavior you would see in two opposition politicians having a debate for a live audience. So with James, he is never in a position to open up, to try and understand why someone is coming from the place they do, because I think you would find if he does try and understand, he would learn that they are actually making some sense. Then he would have to concede from his hard left positions, which he becomes more and more entrenched in as even the weeks go by. Let me take this moment to say, if you guys want to support this channel and help me get more and more great content out to you, there's a few ways you can do that. There is a PayPal link in my description for a one-time donation. You can join the YouTube membership community where you'll get access to the Jack Jewell Uncut videos, or even better, join the Jack Jewell Uncut Substack where you will get my full, uncut, untamed, and unashamed takes, which is too controversial for YouTube, as well as articles and bonus footage seen nowhere else, including this episode of TikTok Sick. And listen, I do not hold back in this episode, so you're going to want to check it out. Number 5, envy.
Reduce the amount of money that you and your wife are set to inherit from her when she dies, and she can fix the roof and have a brand new boiler by tea time today.
What is with these giant mugs? It matches his face because he's a mug.
My son is a partner in a top 40 accountancy firm. My child psychologist.
Face.
And that...
He just has disdain for success.
Why did I succeed in my life? Because I'm entrepreneurial, because
Except for the bit where you didn't.
Oh, he is such a...
You think...
No, I work harder than you. That's all.
Links are in the description.
Good morning. I was actually at the Riverside yesterday, and I booed the knee.
Okay.
You can just see his absolute disdain. Okay. So here they're talking about BLM, and I found so many videos of James O'Brien talking about BLM. One of the callers is talking about guys at a football match who booed all the football players taking the knee because they were getting just very pissed off with this constant virtue signaling. James O'Brien spent his time during 2020 bullying anyone who had even the slightest critique of BLM. It's funny because now BLM has become so disgraced. Most people know there's far more to it than the unscientifically proven belief that police discriminate against black men and shoot them all the time. And if you want to check out more of that, I actually have a video essay debunking the whole thing, so you can watch that. Link is on the screen.
Why do you think the players are doing it?
I know the reasons that they've said that they're doing it.
So you booed that then?
No.
So you booed the reasons that they haven't said?
My undertone is that when I hear the word Black Lives Matter, I think of burning buildings in America, attacking the police, and violent protests.
Yes.
So I'm not...
Have you tried not to?
Sorry?
Have you tried not to think that? Have you tried to think about the words and what they actually mean?
Have you tried not to think? Have you tried not to have feelings and opinions? It is totally legitimate to talk about BLM and to say, actually, even though some people have had good intentions behind this in trying to call out racism, in which you can't actually find it in this case, but let's say it's there. But you could also definitely say that it has caused loads of issues in these people being allowed to run wild in the streets, burn buildings, and then the stifling of free speech and ability to criticize it has led to catastrophic results and us being unable to stop these situations from happening and having to placate sort of civil terrorism that we saw with BLM. And James O'Brien is very ready to just write all that off and say, well, did you just try not thinking that? He's geeks.
Well, one of my aunties actually was killed during a Black Lives Matter protest last year.
And that's appalling. But have you tried thinking about what the words actually mean?
Statement done.
Oh yeah, so sorry your relative was murdered during that. But have you tried not thinking about it? Have you tried thinking about what the words mean? Words and rhetoric can conceal some very dark things, right? We see this with all the trans stuff. Trans rights are human rights. Trans people exist. It's just all a bunch of vague rhetoric. You know, protect trans kids means sterilize gay kids. Trans rights now means allow men into women's prisons. So you cannot just tell him the words mean Black Lives Matter. So that means any behavior that comes out of that is just unrelated and doesn't matter.
But again, you're telling them why they're doing it, and they're giving you a very different answer to that question. So what do you think qualifies you to say, oh, I know that's why you say you're doing it, but I know better?
I think restarted as soon as football restarted back in August or July.
How about the fact that football players were pressured into doing this, and if one of them decided not to, they would have been attacked from a woke mob online and in person? There is definitely no consensus that every single one of those football players was really passionate about BLM and agreed with the cause. Social pressure is a very real thing, and I have no doubt that many of them would have felt uncomfortable with this, especially if they'd done a bit of research and learned the dark undertones of the Black Lives Matter organization, all of the embezzlement and financial fraud from those leaders, as well as the anti-capitalist undertone behind this movement linked to Antifa. Ultimately, it is a Marxist movement when it is supposed to just be about racial injustice.
Whether it was. And I think a lot of people think, when does this stop? Not that they necessarily think that racism is not a problem, but would this be an indefinite thing?
Well, don't talk to me about a lot of people. Just talk to me about yourself.
Well, that's exactly what I...
Or why don't you just answer his question? That is just a tiny part of what he said. Oh, well, a lot of people feel like this. Why can't he say that? Because he is speaking for a lot of people that feel that way, especially if you have all of these men booing other men that take the knee. And yes, it's very legitimate to say we're sort of sick of this, even if it's for a cause you agree with. I would like to be able to go to a film, watch a Disney movie without it being some sort of political statement and guilt trip for my whiteness and maleness. Or in their case, just go and have a good time watching football. We don't have to make everything a political statement. And even more in the UK, the problem with BLM, this affected the whole world. There were protests all over London. In terms of racial injustice, you cannot just import the problems in America. Let's say the problems in America are real and black people are really shot at a higher proportion than white people, which they're not. Trust me, I've done the research. Maybe you can do it too. Educate yourself. But anyway, we import something from the US which isn't really true, is completely skewed. We apply it to the UK. Try and name the last casualty or fatality that resulted from an act of racism in the UK. There has been a moral panic here over it since the Stephen Lawrence case a very, very long time ago, which is why these non-crime hate incidents were created to basically stifle free speech if anyone says anything that offends someone, right? But those issues with the police are not happening here in the UK. And actually, if you look into crime statistics, it's far more likely as a white person to be murdered by a black person and a black person to be murdered by another black person than a white person to murder a black person. And I'm sorry if any of you get mad at that. The truth hurts. Reality hurts. It's hard dealing with reality, but we're here. James O'Brien is not in reality, and he's happy to import propaganda from American culture, apply it to the UK, and then if anyone questions it, he has an issue with that.
So you think we've had enough of it now?
Well, that's not the point, really. The point is that...
Sorry.
Yes, we did have enough of it. That's okay. It's okay.
I think there are a lot of people who would say...
But no, again, you're doing it... Sorry to badger you, but I don't want to hear from a lot...
Sorry. See him just like moving around, shuffling out his papers. He has no patience to actually listen to a caller. And it is just so narcissistic and gross to watch. I have no idea how this guy has so many supporters who idolize him. It is just gross. It makes my skin crawl watching him. And I'm sorry to put you through this, but it's necessary.
Of people, it's a one-on-one conversation. You feel that it should stop now because it's gone on for long enough.
I think that it has to stop at some stage.
Yes.
Maybe not now, but I have a feeling that...
Would you boo if you were there?
No, of course I wouldn't.
Well, why did you say it like that? Why did you say, of course I wouldn't?
Well, because that's what I feel.
But you share the views of the people that are booing. You're explaining them to me.
No, I didn't. I said that I think at some stage it should stop.
Yes.
Now, this is an example of how he is very happy just to lump everyone who disagrees with him in an extreme bucket. It is very easy, James, listen now without interrupting me. It's very easy to hold an opinion, but also say, I'm not going to behave in a certain way.
It's a one-on-one
and maybe
conversation.
Speaking about
you
it on the internet like this.
That it should stop now because it's gone on for long enough.
Trying to go and harass a group of people.
I think that it has to stop
the fact that he's pushing him into this
maybe not
corner,
now,
I feel sorry for his callers because a lot of his arguments don't even make any sense.
No, of course
but James probably understands that himself. But for him, it's easier to put everyone in this demon bucket, this racist, right-wing, far-right bucket, than acknowledge that people are complex and people feel a variety of things about a variety of issues. So you can't just say, I have some critiques of BLM, and then you are akin to someone arriving at a match and booing a bunch of football players who, like I said before, a lot of them probably didn't want to be doing that.
And I think that the problem is...
And the people who are booing are booing because, like you, they believe that at some stage it should stop.
Yes, but I said I wouldn't boo, so there's obviously a complete distinction there.
What's the difference between you and them?
Why are you talking about all these people? Why don't you just talk about what you feel, James? I don't want to hear about the people booing. Let's talk about just what we're talking about. You could just play him at his own game.
Mate, I thought you were here to tell me the toxicity had diminished.
Diminished?
Yeah, I have.
But you're sounding well toxic, mate.
Because you won't
So
allow
gross.
me to get to...
No, I won't allow you to avoid the question. I won't allow you to avoid the question.
No, you won't allow me to speak. You do this all the time.
No, I don't. I insist that people answer the question. Are you going to answer the question?
Yes, he doesn't allow people to speak because he's a bully.
Are you going to answer the question?
The CBI, I've answered the question, and now I'm asking you to move on. The CBI, sponsored by Price Waterhouse, and you repeated this afterwards, said that unemployment...
Combing that greasy hair, so gross. And just the absolute narcissism and entitlement of this guy. Why don't you answer the question? Why don't you answer the question? The guy's saying, well, I would. You're just not letting me speak. Then as soon as he starts speaking, you can see him. Let's play that little clip again.
And now I'm asking you to move on. The CBI, sponsored by Price Waterhouse, and you repeated this.
Just turn him down. I've had enough of him now. Just such a disgrace. Acts like he owns the effing world. And I've heard that he earns hundreds of thousands of pounds doing this. It's just sickening. LBC, I'm available if you want, just saying.
Well, do I have to? I mean,
no, but I'm just interested in why you only care about these issues when we're talking about foreigners, and you never ring me when we're talking about poverty in this country, or indeed about the plight of veterans, which we cover a lot on this programme.
It isn't compulsive to tune into your
No,
station.
of course it isn't, but it's interesting that you mention these issues today that we're not talking about, and you never call in when we are talking about them. Why do you think that is?
Well, you were going on about Braverman and the fact that you couldn't see why she was...
Why do you think that is?
Why does it matter? Just listen to what he has to say. The normal response to that would be, okay, well, to me, I can't see the connection, but explain to me why you bring that up. With him, it's like no conversation can even take off from the runway. As soon as someone starts talking, he immediately is just get them to mix up their words, focus on the tiniest minutiae of what they're saying, and then the whole point of the argument just gets lost. I don't know how people listen to this for 3 hours on a weekday.
That you never ring in to talk passionately and concernedly about the issues that you've raised when we're not talking about them?
Well, I've been taking my time over a long period of time to listen.
Maybe because he's busy and doesn't listen to your radio show religiously every day.
Okay.
Ideas of my own.
So why would you ring in on a topic that's not about military veterans or social housing? To talk about military veterans and social housing. I'm just wondering what your own answer to that question is. Here we are having a conversation about refugees. I'm going to ring in and talk about...
Maybe because he has a point and there's some connection to be made. Why don't you let him make it? I mean, I don't know what the conversation was about, but raising the issue of social housing being given to foreign-born nationals is a very pertinent issue. A lot of asylum claimants and refugees do get given social housing when your average Brit who is working 2 jobs trying to feed their kids does not get that because they're on the waiting list for years. The people of the UK have a real right to be concerned about that because they are paying into the tax system. In London, there is a crazy high percentage, I'll put it up on the screen, of Somalians who live in social housing. So for all the Somalians in London, this is the percentage of them who live in social housing. It is an insult to the British taxpayer. So if you want to say, well, when we have this asylum policy, then what are the kind of ripple effects that creates? And if one of them is people are jumping the queue on the social housing ladder, then someone has the right to bring that up and voice a concern. And this whole debate, it doesn't have to be this toxic if you just let people talk about some common sense feelings.
In and talk about something completely different.
No, listen.
I am listening, David. I think that's the problem.
You called it an invasion.
No, Suella Braverman did.
Well, yeah, all right.
I think that's a disgusting word to use.
It's not, no, but the way it was portrayed was as though...
What they're talking about here are the small boat crossings. So we have hundreds of young military fighting age men still coming to the UK illegally every single day. Last year, we had upwards of 40,000 people enter the country. Most of them are young men. It's costing us almost £6 billion a year. As a definition, I'm just going to take the whole morality thing out of it and the emotion out of it. If you enter the UK illegally and break our laws, you are invading that country, right? So just as a term, I know that it comes with this whole emotive response, but it's really the left I think, the woke side of the left who lean into that, because you can use a word, but it's the woke left who actually spin that to cause a real emotional response. And then they just get so focused on this word. The whole point of the conversation gets lost. And that is families feel unsafe when they have young military fighting age men coming from cultures in the Middle East, in Africa, other parts of Asia, completely incompatible to our own, where women are treated as second-class citizens, where they have a much higher prevalence of rape, religious fundamentalism. People have a very legitimate reason for being concerned about that, especially if a hotel in their town is closed down to house all of these men. James O'Brien, in his metropolitan bubble, of course, doesn't have to feel the ramifications of that. So he will bully anyone who disagrees.
You know, it's bad for her to say it's an invasion. Well,
I think it's a disgusting word to use.
No, quiet. A large number of hornets.
Did you just tell me to be quiet?
A large number of hornets.
Did you just tell me to be quiet?
A large number of hornets or bees flying through your window at any time could be seen as an invasion.
Right, yeah, you carry on.
But they don't necessarily want to murder you. You've left the ruddy window open.
Okay.
If you've got a wound on the side of your leg and bacteria get in there, it's nothing personal. It's just bad luck.
So you're comparing refugees to bacteria?
No, but you're...
He loves it. He just loves trying to catch them out and bully them. It is so sickening. And it's juvenile behavior from this 50-whatever-year-old man who just cannot bear to have a grown-up conversation.
Oh, you've done that straight away because I know where you're coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, you're deliberately doing that.
Doing it, you are.
Just run me through that, David.
I just see them. I will. I see.
Why have you mentioned bacteria in a conversation about refugees?
Number 2, Brexit trauma.
How about all the people who voted stay move to Europe and all the leavers stay here? We would have no housing problems, empty hospitals, no unemployment and no immigration problems. Nobody would want to come here and we would have a win-win situation. Well, because you voted to abolish freedom of movement. You forced me to remind you about the research that was published recently into the average intelligence levels of Leave voters versus Remain voters. So you'd have a brain drain. You'd essentially see an exodus of almost everybody clever. So, you see, you send me texts like that and I've got to open Idiot's Corner again, and I really don't want to.
Since 2016, James O'Brien has really not recovered from the fate of Brexit, and he seems to be one of the few commentators who just really, really, really cannot let this go. Still crying about it today and forever trying to make out that those who voted Leave have a lower IQ or intelligence than those who voted Remain, because of course James O'Brien is a Remainer, so therefore he is superior to anyone who voted Leave. During the whole Brexit campaign, I wasn't very political. I didn't have strong opinions about it. From the circles I was in, I definitely had an impression from stuff I was seeing on social media that people who voted Leave were just bigoted, stupid, common racist people. And it goes to show how the particularly white working class native Brits are portrayed in this country, who have had their small communities and small towns deindustrialized, stricken into poverty, and then completely changed culturally from an influx of all of these cultures, particularly Islamic cultures as well. And they have a right to be concerned about that. But moreover than that, there were so many other reasons, which I didn't know at the time, to leave the European Union, because it is a European superpower that takes away our sovereignty, our ability to govern our own laws, and meddles in all sorts of different things, like our trade, like our foreign policy, like our ability to deport foreign criminals and rapists. There were so many reasons to vote for Brexit. And now I would vote to leave based off everything I know. I know that I have a high intelligence. It might be above the average. That is something we can debate another time. Even more than that, intelligence, as he's talking about, may refer to university educated. That is becoming less and less credible going to uni with the kind of woke indoctrination that goes on there. So there are all sorts of different types of intelligence. And yes, while there may have been a higher percentage of people voting Leave who were not university educated, what about all the other types of intelligence, like working in trades, for example? That's something that I would not be able to do or have the mind to do. And it's just astonishing the arrogance this guy possesses, because he wants to be a mainstream UK radio broadcaster, which he is. But the fact is, over 50% of the country voted Leave. So are you just going to disparage and discriminate against all those people? And it seems like James O'Brien is very happy to.
I've seen people entering this country and going straight down to the benefits office.
You can tell they're not British. You can tell they've come from a European country. You can tell they're not on holiday. You can tell that they have no intention of looking for a job. And you can tell that they are intending to head immediately upon arrival to the benefits office. So that's at least 5 almost psychic insights that this fella's possessed of. And then he picks one to follow. On several occasions, he correctly picks the one that is going to go directly from Heathrow to the benefits office.
Well, you don't actually know that, do you? Perhaps he lives in a small community and has seen people move in recently and has seen them going down to the benefits office. Perhaps that is true. But overall, why don't you just listen to this guy, this old man who clearly has some concerns about his community? This is the issue, is that I know that it makes people uncomfortable because of how we've been conditioned to think about demographics and race and immigrants, right? But I don't think there's anything wrong with just having a discussion and saying, I don't really want loads of immigration. You know, I want to vote for less of that. I like our culture the way it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I can also empathize with these people who think you have a duty towards the whole planet. It's not just your country. So you need to welcome in people from all sorts of different cultures. And you need to just accept the fact that your community will change and that people around you aren't speaking the language. You know, that's a totally fine opinion to have. I don't agree with that. You know, I sit kind of in the middle here, being an immigrant myself who's come here, integrated, paid into the tax system, etc. You also, James O'Brien, are not a psychic and you don't know what that guy's seen. But again, you're not actually listening to anything he has to say. You just want to make a mockery out of him.
The slow realisation that Brexit was a terrible mistake continues.
We're regulating our own businesses even more than they were as EU members. Brexit has failed.
I'm sure that my memory is not deceiving me, but didn't he once say this?
If Brexit is a disaster, I will go and live abroad. I'll go and live somewhere else.
It's a shame, of course, that we're not in the European Union anymore, because then there'd be 27 countries to which he could move more or less freely.
This is a legitimate criticism of Nigel Farage, who has been one of our most influential persons in politics, now leader of the Reform UK Party and member for Parliament, bidding to be the next Prime Minister. And he was a key figure in making Brexit happen, driving the conversation around it. But with Brexit, the way we talk about it is so overly simplistic because, yes, we can say Brexit has failed or it has not brought us the things we thought it would. But Brexit in and of itself is not going to do anything. Just leaving the European Union does not mean life is going to get better. It's about what you use Brexit for. But the problem is that the whole political establishment were against Brexit. They felt that they had to do the referendum. Even the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, was a Remainer. He wanted to stay. No one actually believed in Brexit, bar some political figures, and they weren't even able to get a majority to get a deal what they wanted. We are not using it to our advantage in terms of producing our own oil and gas, having stricter laws on our fishing so that it serves our own interests, actually controlling our legal migration, which they did the exact opposite. They just threw open the borders to millions of non-EU nationals. So to just say Brexit has failed in itself, you know, it's true, but it's only because we've not actually used all the great advantages we could have got from Brexit. And if you don't believe in something, you're hardly going to make it work. And that is something I think the Remainers, the Ramoners, as we like to call them, know, but they're very happy just to say, oh, well, this is the best you're going to get with Brexit, and this was always going to be this way. And in a way, it's really sad because Brexit presented us a really big opportunity. And you know, it still does. If we get the right people in power, they could really turn things around and use all the advantages that our sovereignty has given us. But right now, that's just not what we're seeing.
It's about what a no-deal Brexit would mean. And off it goes. And here we are. And I don't know how to talk about it anymore. It's the strangest thing. It's a bit like Tom Jones forgetting how to sing Delilah. I need a slightly more up-to-date reference. Imagine if Taylor Swift forgot the words to Shake It Off. Or never, ever, ever, ever getting back. What's after that? I forget. I'm never, ever. I don't know how to talk about it anymore, and I don't understand why. It's extraordinary.
Then James, stop talking about it. It's old news. It's 2016. Move on, please. This was only last year. He said that. Move on. Build a bridge. Get over it. It's like someone who was with a partner, got dumped, and then 10 years later is still stalking their social media, obsessed with them. Meanwhile, they've had kids, have had a life, and you're just stuck in your own little resentful corner. Really, since Brexit, you can see the way he looks. He just is not looking after himself. There's rumors that he might have an alcohol problem. Who knows if that's true? But if you don't know how to talk about it, then talk about other things, okay? Brexit is done. It's gone. And I think, yes, we can really use more of it to our advantage. But in terms of debating the remain and leave, that ship has sailed. And just give yourself a chill pill, James. Get over it.
If I were to get angry, today would be one of those days. The usual suspects. My therapy has been to write about them, to talk about them, to point out, to make sure that there's no excuse for anybody anywhere not knowing what they've done to this country, how they broke it but if I were to get angry, today would be the day. How dare they continue to strut around the studios and pontificate in Parliament when they have created a United Kingdom that does not even sit at the table when European leaders meet to discuss a turning point in Western history.
Yeah. With Brexit, why don't we just look at the rest of Europe and see how they're all thriving and benefiting from being part of the European Union? Let's look at Germany, whose economy is shrinking year on year, where Islamic terrorist attacks are pretty much the norm now, one happening every couple of months. Or look at France, whose government is absolutely falling apart, who have a huge populist revolt there. Same in Austria. You know, there's so many examples of all these countries who are in the EU. They're having all the same problems as us because they're addicted to mass migration. They're addicted to leftist policies and over-regulation, which are destroying their economies. They're addicted to net zero climate change policies, which are making their energy prices the most expensive in the world and again, destroying their economies. So we could have become less regulated in the UK and freed up the economy and got us building, got business growing. But instead, we've just increased and added more and more regulation. And to sit up there on your high horse and say, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you, James O'Brien, to judge people so heavily over this decision? Overall, it's kind of fun to watch because it's so obvious you'll never get over this. You will just continue to seethe and writhe like the sick little creature you are. And all of us will be here to watch it, eating our popcorn. Number 3, anti-British.
You can't say what you want in this country about immigration without being called a racist. I said, go on, mate, say it. I promise I won't call you a racist. And he said, okay, Hounslow's full of Pakistanis and they smell. Well, I think, actually, no, he said, Hounslow's full of Pakistanis. I said, well, what's wrong with that? He goes, they smell. And I thought, oh, Lord. I felt a little bit of a frisson of fear that possibly this invitation to him to say whatever he wanted to say about immigration was something I'd come to regret. And I said, what do they smell of, John? And he said, curry. I thought, what the hell do I say now? So I said, do you like curry, John? And he said, yes, James.
Oh, it's just so self-indulgent. He absolutely loves it. A frisson of fear. Oh, did you feel a frisson of fear, James O'Brien, in your woke little elite bubble? Of course, when he talks about people who have any legitimate concerns over immigration, he picks this absolutely absurd example, whereas most people who have things to say about immigration, including myself, wouldn't lead with the fact that people smell. That's obviously, arguably a racist thing to say. But like everything, let me just try and lean into this for a minute, because in my apartment block, it is full of middle class professionals, people who are very culturally compatible to myself. If I was in another town, I could be in an apartment block with people of all different cultures who've moved here quite recently. Food is something that's very familiar to us and makes us feel like we're at home. The truth is that there are other cultures who cook food, which smells so much stronger. You know, I've walked into flats before where everything does smell like curry, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that that's dirty, that's wrong, that's disgusting, anything like that. But the truth is, in my apartment block, if that was the case and every day I was walking in to really strong aromas, I would probably start to get a little bit pissed off. And I think the truth is most people would. Let's face it. I kind of want the air to be clear of any leftover food aroma and stuff like that. I don't want to be smelling of spices. It's not an argument I would lead with by any means, but culture is a mix of all different sorts of things. And perhaps that is one of them, which you can argue for. I'm just saying, love to know what you guys think about that comment.
What we're talking about is what we mean, what you mean when you say you're proud to be British.
Right, I am proud to be British. Right.
What do you mean? What do you mean when you say that? What are you proud of?
I'm a British Indian, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't support India as a cricket team. I actually support
so
England.
You passed the Norman Tebbit test then?
No. Look. A lot of...
Why is this an interrogation? You know, you are British, James O'Brien. I know that is so hard to accept in this awful racist country that is Great Britain, but you're acting like this is an interrogation for an Indian British person. You know, he's not even English. He's an Indian British person, and he's saying how much he loves Britain, and you're acting like it's an interrogation. Don't support India in, was it cricket? That is a valid point, because if you're British first, then other things should come second. You are British. It must be so exhausting just hating your country this much.
My friends are white English, Yeah, but it's being part of the community and doing the stuff that British people do, and maybe occasionally wearing an England football shirt, you know.
But what are you proud of?
Proud of what Britain stands for.
What does it stand for? What does it stand
for? Fairness, equality.
It's one of the most unequal societies in the world.
Yes, but you get that everywhere. You get that.
So why are you proud of it then? You can't say I'm proud of all the fairness when there isn't any.
Come on, James, come on.
What do you mean, come on? It's not my fault.
I'm sorry, but how is the UK one of the most unequal societies in the world? I think it is the most equal society in the world. Out of every single country in the world, the UK has shown itself to be the most tolerant and open to different cultures, to homosexuality, to different faiths and religions. We're more successful than the US in terms of our history. Name me one other country that has better race relations and better faith relations than the UK. And a lot of people are just starting to feel brave enough to call out legitimate concerns with fundamentalist religions. It's not really Christianity which is causing a problem here. If you build your platform on multiculturalism and you think all of us have to fall in love with multiculturalism and respect it, and it is just the way of life, Britain is one of the most multicultural societies in the world. If it's failed here, if it's utterly miserable here with multiculturalism, then how can you ever argue that multiculturalism is a good thing? How could you then argue for something that has demonstrably never worked, right?
A lot of things to be proud of being British.
Range Rovers?
I mean, okay, if you didn't like this country...
No one's saying you don't like this country. We all like this country. It's our home. I do like this country. It's my home, but what am I supposed to be proud of?
Yeah, you don't, James. It's very obvious. Even though you think 50% of the country are stupid because they voted for Brexit, wow, sounds like such a great country to live in. Why is James O'Brien wanting to represent the people if he can't bear the thought of someone being proud to be from the country? And sometimes being proud to be of a nation, you can't necessarily put your finger on it. You can talk about the food, you can talk about the sports, you can talk about the customs. And in England, there are many of those. You can talk about all those things, but innately, there is also something indescribable, ineffable about why you love your country. And there is nothing wrong with loving your country. In fact, it is a beautiful thing.
I don't actually agree with her around the policy, but there is no alternative, James. I'm married to a lady from Asia. She paid to come here. She's nursing. I've no problem with migration. I think the clue is in the word illegal.
No, the clue is in the word asylum or safe route. So if they don't come by the boats, how do they come here?
No, James. No, a lot of those economic migrants come in by the boat.
But how do you find out whether they are bona fide asylum seekers or not?
Be looked at. I mean, at the end of the day...
And at the end of that process, of course, they cease to be either legal or illegal. They are either asylum...
At the end of the day, if it's illegal, it's illegal.
So what's the legal way?
It is illegal. The legal way is applying through our asylum routes. And if you're in France, a safe country, there is no point crossing the sea to the UK. But everyone knows why this is happening. It's because the UK has a far better welfare policy when it comes to illegal migrants and refugees than France. They give them far, far less. You cannot argue that there is not an economic element in there. There may be a mix of refugee and economic motivation. The majority of the asylum claims are approved because it is so hard to process these people. And when we try and return them to their country of origin, they appeal and appeal. This takes years of taxpayer legal costs, and then they get to stay anyway. To say that it is just all asylum is totally wrong and disingenuous. If there's no such thing as illegal immigration, then why have borders at all?
The legal way is to get a visa.
No, if you're a refugee...
You can go to a British embassy.
If you're no, you can't.
Well, yes, you can.
No, I promise you can't. If you've come out of Afghanistan or Syria, or if you're fleeing from...
We have embassies in Italy.
We can sit here all day and you can say that all of these people crossing the channel in boats could instead have gone to the embassy in Paris and applied for asylum. And it never becomes true, however many times you say it. Because when we do that, it turns out about 70 to 80% of the people who apply are genuine asylum seekers.
The rule in Europe, as far as I'm aware, is that whichever country you enter first should be the country you claim asylum in. So to travel all the way across mainland Europe through all these safe countries, landing in France, which is also a safe country, you wouldn't in France go to the British embassy and say, I need asylum in the UK. They would say, well, you're in France, you should be claiming it here. And I know this is a really difficult topic, okay, because I want to have compassion. I think a lot of us want to have compassion, and it is so terrible to see what's going on in some parts of the world, in the Middle East in particular. The reality is also with the crime statistics, which are recently coming out in the UK, showing that people from certain countries, such as Afghanistan, are committing sexual crimes and violent crimes at a far higher rate. So the fundamental argument comes down to, who do you want to protect more? Your own family or people from a war-stricken country that you've never met before? Our inclination to protect our own group first is actually a very normal human trait. You know, we're tribal people. And a lot of the woke progressive stuff, the postmodern shit, is always trying to force us to believe that our natural biological instincts are wrong and shameful. And I think it is possible to kind of take the emotion out of this and just speak about it from a pragmatic point. Because if we want to say, okay, let's take in loads and loads of these people from these cultures, then inevitably the price you pay is going to be this increased crime. And that is just the way it goes. And maybe some progressives think, well, it's worth it because we're helping people. You can have that view. I don't have that view because millions and millions of people would like to be in this country and are in terrible circumstances. And we can take boatloads of people, but it's still just a drop in the ocean. What I feel would be a far more sensible asylum policy is if we welcomed women and children, whereas women and children need our help the most. But then why are all the people coming across on the boats men? There is no coincidence we are getting all these men from North African countries, from Middle Eastern countries with cultures completely different to our own, and who are saying suddenly that they're LGBTQ, that they're gay. And the sentiment from people is so strong that they don't want this, that the pro-mass immigration people will always lose, because their argument is, you're not allowed to feel this way. You're wrong for feeling this way. That's not going to stop people feeling that way. It's not going to stop. It's just going to make people angrier and angrier. And I think they know this, so they have to keep trying to demonize people. People should just be allowed to feel what they want to feel about immigration. You know, you don't have to be compelled to have a duty to the whole planet. It's okay to want to have a duty to your community and the people you know.
But from Bangladesh, Pakistan, they're not in any danger.
But how do you know? You can get killed in some countries for being gay.
And they can come to this country and kill me for being gay, so just saying.
Anyway, the British values that are being eroded, let's go through them one by one.
Well, I think for me the biggest thing is I think we have imported a lot of people that don't have the same values when it comes to the treatment of women.
Yeah, but we're talking about what the values...
You can see just the little buzzwords and he's like, he just can't bear it. Fun to watch.
What are the British values that are being eroded?
Well, we would treat women equally.
So you've got the same value that you always had. So your value hasn't been eroded. There are just some people who disagree with you.
I think we import cultures that treat women badly.
Well,
we're now the acid-throwing capital of the world. Acid crime is, through the roof.
Okay.
Look at him just laughing. We're the acid-throwing capital of the world, and he just laughs at it. Well, what if it's true? Maybe it is true. Probably is true. We're importing loads of cultures, and women are getting raped by Pakistani gangs. Oh, I'm just going to laugh at that. No. It's always the human rights of the migrant that comes first. And his stupid, ridiculous argument here of, oh, well, if you and I still care about women's rights, how is it being eroded? That's not how this works. The whole point of values is that it is commonly shared among the vast majority of the nation. So if you're changing the demographics so more and more people think women should not be allowed to show their face in public, then the values of the country are being eroded. They're being changed. And just because you, James O'Brien, in your London bubble, haven't changed your views about women, doesn't mean that saying we're going to increase the percentage of all the people in the country who don't feel like women should have equal rights is not eroding British values. It's the most stupid thing, because if you keep carrying on and on like this over centuries, then people like James O'Brien won't exist. Maybe that won't be such a bad thing. But people like me, a gay person, won't exist if you keep increasing the demographic of cultures who think my way of life is a sin and could be condemned by death. Oh, well, the raped woman hasn't changed her mind, so how is it eroding the values? Well, maybe she wouldn't have been raped. So in summary, I have my opinions, I'm not racist, and get used to it. Number 4, woke liberal elitist.
I think this job is harder than manual labour. I genuinely think, I don't know what I would compare it to, probably flying an aeroplane without autopilot or being an air traffic controller. I'm being a little bit...
Looks so disheveled.
No, I do actually believe it, actually. I'm not just doing this for fun or for provocations. I honestly think that this job is more exhausting Because manual labour, you can do 8 hours a day. You could not do this for 8 hours a day. Even Steve Allen would struggle to do this for 8 hours a day. And if you want to hear effortless, tune into Steve in the morning. You could not do what I do for 8 hours a day, but you can do manual labour for 8 hours a day. And let's just say that we'd be equally tired at the end of the shift. I'm sorry, he says, I'm a bin man. I do 20 to 30,000 steps a day. Come and do a day on the dust cart. I bet you can't move at the end of the day. Yeah, right, Lewis. But I bet you couldn't do this. Don't literally come in, sit down, that's it, the light goes on. I haven't got like guests queuing up to talk to me or anything like that. You just come in, you sit down, that's it. What is more exhausting? Manual labour or intellectual exertion?
I'm just speechless after that. Let me just take a minute. Okay. How do I break that down? Well, James, most people, trust me, would not want to be you in any regard or capacity, not even on LBC, but just in general. Sitting there talking shite for the whole day. And I'm not surprised you couldn't do it for 8 hours a day, because the way that you operate is so mentally exhausting. The way that you bully people, the way that you push your own agenda constantly, don't listen to people, demonize people. What is a better example there than his woke elite brain sitting there ridiculing a person who's a bin man, does a great service for this country, something so many of us would never do in a million years, but something all of us demand through our taxes that is done for us. And no, maybe a bin man couldn't sit on a talk show speaking absolute shite for 8 hours a day because he might not be charismatic like you, James. But trust me, there are far harder jobs and being an absolute joke. And he's right. If you tried to do 20,000 steps a day, I would like to see the state of you at the end of that. Maybe it would do you some good to do some shifts as a bin man, James.
I just want to say I'm actually a fan of Trump, and I think there's a lot of stuff in the media which are lies. Well, no, I just think you even said this morning, you said it's okay for him, what is it, the quote you used, it's okay to be racist again?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you draw that conclusion?
He accused Barack Obama of not having been born in America and lying about his birth certificate.
So how's that racist?
Birtherism is racist because Barack Obama is well, you can't, I mean, you can talk over me if you want, Stephen, but okay, no, you crack on.
There have been previous presidents that have actually been white that have also not been accused of being born in America. So was that also racist?
No, of course it wouldn't be racist. Who was that, by the way?
Why not? Surely we should just treat everyone equally in this regard.
I think a president from 1880. It goes back over
No, come on. You're on national radio. You've got your ducks in a row. Tell me about the last time.
Oh, he's got him now. He's got him pinned down now. Let's see how this goes.
I'm an American president was accused of not being born in America.
I've forgotten the names. But
don't be silly. Don't tease me. Of course you haven't forgotten the name. You wouldn't come on the radio and say something and then immediately fall apart in response to the first question you're asked.
It's not falling apart.
Okay, so let's go back to the lies that have been told about Donald Trump. Which one would you reach for first?
But because he's questioned someone's birth certificate, that makes him racist.
No, because he questioned a black man's birth certificate, knowing that it was absolutely untrue.
So I think the accusation is probably ridiculous, but I have to disagree with James here. I think if we can question one person on a thing and question another person on a thing, we should be able to do that equally. So we can't say, you question this person, it's racist, you question that person, it's not. You could be a white person born in a European country claiming to be American. Would it be racist for you to question that?
So that would be called a racist lie, which is encouraged to make people who are uncomfortable with Barack Obama's skin colour believe something that's not true about him, because it then undermines the legitimacy of his presidency. So briefly, because it's not going great, but I'd like you to stick around for a little bit longer. What is it you liked about him, Stephen?
I think that he come out and spoke a lot of the truth on stuff.
Yeah, what stuff? Stephen's hung up.
Well, look, I wish some of these callers had a bit more preparation, because James O'Brien is a tough cookie. And look, if you don't have your arguments in check and examples of all the things you say and statistics, then he ultimately is going to bully you. So advice to anyone who calls James O'Brien, I should call James O'Brien someday. That would be interesting. I could post it on my YouTube channel. But I think the accusation from Trump, I don't really know the context around that, but it is probably ridiculous. Trump is many, many things that are very distasteful and narcissistic, but I don't think Trump is racist. And I think the fact that he had so many Latinos and black people vote for him this time round is a testament to that. It's a very simplistic narrative for people just to keep saying that he's racist and banging that drum, when there are far more legitimate concerns you can level at Trump than racist.
the corruption of observable reality, that doesn't disappear with Trump. Millions and millions of people still believe the lies he tells them. I don't understand it. I've never understood it. My theory is that it all comes down to racism, white supremacism, call it what you will. But that's not a very reassuring thought, even if it turns out to be true.
It is just so pathetic and juvenile to not try and understand someone's argument and just say, oh, well, it just comes down to they're white supremacists. Because if you think that way, the majority of the US are white supremacists, including black people and Latinos who voted for Donald Trump. How about you actually try and understand why people voted for him and start listening to these people? Because otherwise, you're never going to win the argument or get your side to prevail.
The fact that he tried to steal the last election. He was prepared to subvert the entire democratic process up to and including the potential assault upon his own vice president. The disowning of his most senior former colleagues, the condemnation of his former military chief, the use of the F word by his former chief of staff, the condemnation from his own national security advisor. None of it mattered.
Watching Trump get elected and all of these melts online was very fun. And, I look forward to the possibility of the next UK election and what may happen there, whether it's Reform UK, whether it's the Tories are back, whatever. Number one on the watch list is going to be James O'Brien and watching his meltdowns. Sure, you can argue some of the stuff he said. I mean, the thing about the chief of staff is always a contentious topic, because surely someone you worked with who hates you is going to be happy to say all sorts of things about you, including that you're a fascist. But there are many, many examples of how the Democrats lied to the public and overthrew democracy through stuff like the Hunter Biden laptop censorship, COVID censorship, pretending that Joe Biden was sane when he was in fact senile throughout his whole presidency and just a puppet. Everything with Kamala Harris not even winning the primary. There is a lot of corruption that happens on the other side too. But of course, he's probably happy to overlook that.
How do we tell the difference between the people who are up for a fight and the people who are acting out of purity and principle, Lee?
The majority of working class people around London anyway, just normal builders, not always builders and that, but just normal people that have had it a bit hard in their life and just looking at what's going on here. They've got to the point, it's becoming a bit of a joke. Well, not everyone is racist.
What is it that you fear when you describe things going too far?
He's talking sense here. This is about the BLM protests again.
What are you worried about?
He's putting a bigger divide where
between who?
White people, race.
No, but we've just established that most people on these marches are white. Or at least loads of them are.
But they're not all white, are they? Come on. I'm not worried about anything. I'm cross about all these statues and that are going to get took down. I think.
But they're not. They've been protected.
No, but the ones that the guys at like hospital and stuff that they're taking down. It's just. Yeah. It's been there for years.
It has been there for years, and we sent children up chimneys for years. But you wouldn't want to go back to that, would you?
Like everyone's life matters. It ain't just black people, is it?
Well, that's what the movement is designed to achieve. It's to say black lives matter as well. So stop killing us.
Yeah, who's saying it doesn't.
Where are all the black people being killed by white people in the UK? Why are these protests in the UK necessary? And it is very legitimate to be a UK citizen and to be concerned about statues being defaced and taken down. There's all sorts of things in the past which we would not do today. But you have to contextualize history. And there are some leaders who did great things. Take Margaret Thatcher, for example, did many great things to save the economy of this country. But she also did Section 28 and oppressed gay people. I can recognize both things at the same time and hold two thoughts in my head at the same time. That doesn't intimidate me just to do that. I don't think she has to be erased from history. Actually, acknowledging these figures, being critical of them, is important for understanding our history and moving forward and actually taking the good things they did and then removing the bad stuff and doing even better things. I think that's important. I totally agree with the caller that it puts the races against each other. It puts us into boxes. It divides us. Once again, this claim that all these black people are just being murdered by white policemen is just simply not true.
Policing record in America makes it absolutely clear.
But I mean, we're not America.
No, it doesn't.
No, but we're talking about where this started with George Floyd, and the records here. The records here also show. You see, now you and me are shouting at each other or talking over each other. I'm not.
All you do is talk over each other, James.
You think that when you say it, you mean we're spending too much time worrying about black people. How would you explain to your child why there was a statue in your town of celebrating a man who treated your people like animals?
I would just say it's part of history. That's what I would say. It ain't right, but it's history.
But so
sometimes it's kind of that simple. You know what I mean? There's a statue of Margaret Thatcher at Parliament. I went to see it. It was fun. Section 28. I'm happy for the statue to still be there. In fact, it's a reminder on that thing and how far we've come.
So why can't we take the statue down then if it's not right?
Because it was up there for a reason. It's been put up as a symbol,
children were up chimneys for a reason, but we managed to get rid of that, didn't we? So what is it about slavery? Why is slavery somehow not as bad as putting children up chimneys?
I'm not saying slavery is not bad. It is bad.
So why can't we take the statue down?
It's part of London that's been up there for years. I'm talking about the ones in London anyway, so...
Right.
I just don't get why progressives, I do get why they do it, because in any far left regime, I think it's very clear that they try to rewrite history and remove historical facts because it doesn't suit their political agenda. Like I said, it's possible to hold both thoughts in your head at once, but for simple-minded people like James O'Brien, I don't think it is.
On safe territory in France or in Germany or whatever, and they want to get over here, they're on safe ground. They would be taken in. They would be accommodated. Why do they throw themselves into the sea, risk their lives, and risk the lives of their children?
You'd have to download...
risk the lives of their children by throwing them in as well.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to download... I'll give you a quick answer, but if you download yesterday's show, you'll get nearly 3 hours answering those questions, David.
Oh, if you download my talk yesterday, you'll hear 3 hours of me talking absolute shite, so... That's your evening time today, your little hobby. Can't think of anything worse. Can you imagine just sitting and watching James O'Brien for an hour?
But the short answer is, if you ask them, they'll obviously tell you. The circumstances of their lives are such that the prospect of risking their lives in the Channel is preferable to doing the things that you've just described.
But they're in France, they're safe.
No, but I've answered your question.
What's the point? They're not having a gun held to their head, are they?
No, but you asked a question, I've given you the answer. For them, it's preferable to risk their lives in the English Channel than it is to stay in the countries that you call safe.
They want to stand the chance of murdering their children as well as...
If it's preferable to risk your life than staying in France, then we need to understand why is France so bad. And you will understand that the benefits they get in France are just nowhere near what they get here. And that is the truth. Shout out to France. I wish you would sort your border out because we are getting pretty sick of this shit.
So if anyone wants to take a shot at Trump, maybe they should make it. Not literally, obviously. Although on second thought, we're just coming up to noon.
Disgraceful. Absolute disgrace. He's very, very happy to make that comment, insinuating that it's okay to shoot. But yet, you're the moral and righteous one, James.
James, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. Yeah, I'm anti-woke.
Excellent. Is it in your Twitter profile?
I don't have Twitter, I've got Instagram, but it's in my Instagram
What does it mean?
profile.
What does it mean?
To me, it means people who seek offence where it doesn't exist. They look for the tiniest little thing and pin on it, and
well, everyone would be anti that, wouldn't they?
No.
No, it's a bit like driving in a bus lane, but not your full car's not in the bus lane. It's just one wheel that's in the bus lane.
You've lost me now. So being someone who's hypersensitive and pedantic is that's annoying and boring for everybody. Maybe we should work an example. So when you come across when and where do you come across the sort of wokeness to which you are so passionately opposed?
Well,
apart from in the bus lane.
I used to work in local authority. I'm now self-employed, but when I worked in local authority, you didn't get on with your work. There was a few hours a week dedicated to these sort of woke agendas.
Yeah, go on.
Going on these sort of courses and these internal training courses. And
well, like what though? What were they teaching?
It was all very insincere.
Well, you might have been. You can't speak for anybody else.
No, but...
Is he speaking for anyone else, James? He loves doing this. Oh, it is just so disingenuous the way that he speaks to people. He speaks to people like they are dirt on the floor. He's never said that everyone else thinks that. He said it is insincere. While they may not say that they're there to stifle debate and open discussion. That is very much the effect of what lots of these courses have. I'm sure we can imagine what they were about: white privilege, pronouns, how you have to be so careful about what you say, otherwise you're going to offend people, being inclusive, except if that inclusive culture means excluding your ability to have your own diversity of thought. Many people disagree with these ridiculous training courses and think that actually it just divides us further. It's just the fact that James is never even willing to give a millimeter and say, okay, I understand what you mean. I disagree personally, but I understand what you mean by that. Maybe there's a way that we can find a way that works for both of us. Like, it is just constant demonizing the other person. He is so convinced that he's right. And it must be so miserable to be James O'Brien. He seems like an absolute miserable human being. You're cringe, you're crisp, and you're cute. You're cute. Oh, wow, wow, wow. That was really something, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my breakdown and analysis of Mr. James Gobshite O'Brien, the most wonderful radio broadcaster in the UK. Weekdays, 10 a.m. It is a great laugh. And the videos I showed you today are just a drop in the ocean of years and years of mindless headbanging listening to this guy. And you know what's funny with TikToksic is I do see on some of my videos that people say, I love your content, but I had to stop watching halfway through because this person is just so insufferable. And it is a long time it's listening to these creators in large doses. You know, it's an overdose of each one of these. I'm here to do the hard work for all of you. I know it's really hard. It's like James O'Brien. It really, really is. You know, he sits there listening to all these bigoted, horrible, racist people, but he does it for us because he's honorable. Anyway, everyone, let me know what you thought of James O'Brien. For the Americans in particular, did you know who this loser was? I'd be very curious to know what you thought of him. And let me know who you would like to see next on TikToksic. I'm open to anything at all. And with that said, I will see you soon for another episode of TikToksic.
It was a definite Nazi salute.
Yeah.
You know, some people are saying, no, it wasn't really of course it was. Definite Nazi salute. And James, I want to ask you, how on earth do you cope with this in doing the job that you do, the brilliant job that you do?
Well, I think I'm lucky. I think the fact that I can do this job makes it easier to deal with all the madness that's going on because I get to speak to people like you every day. I don't have to sit staring at my television. I mean, I guess if I didn't do this for a living, it would be easier to turn it all off and walk away.
I'm totally in awe of you.
Oh, well, stop it. No, don't, thank you.
No, it is how it is.
What kind of coverage is the story getting in Germany? I don't know how many papers...